is up, guys? Unstrung Heroes are back. It's Braxton and Bryce here. This week we have a good topic. We're talking about the September 1st rule for lacrosse in recruiting. So this rule was introduced not too long ago. This does not allow college coaches to contact you until September 1st of your junior year. And we wanted to talk about this because it was not always this way. And Bryce, what are your thoughts on this?
All right, so it makes sense why it started. I'm gonna throw that out there. I mean, I know whenever I started lacrosse, it wasn't like that. So I started playing in 8th grade. That was around 2015, 16. And at that point, once I got to 8th grade, you heard the first Division I commit in 8th grade, like your class.
Right.
Brendan O'Neill committed to Penn State as an 8th grader. Now, to me, I'm thinking, like, I don't even know what I'm doing in high school. And so how does this kid know what he's going to, like, he already knows where he's going to college. So
Right.
I think coaches reaching out to middle schoolers, especially at that younger age where we're still like, what? I feel like that's personally a little weird because, I mean, if you think about it, that was across the board. You look at not even just lacrosse, you saw football players already getting recruited in 8th grade. You saw quarterbacks already committing. There was a quarterback committed to USC in, like, I think it was like 5th or 6th grade, no, 6th or 7th grade. Like, bro, that's what I'm saying. So, like, you start that recruiting process as kids are still developing. I don't think that it says it takes the actual fun out of the sport. At that point, you've created it a job. Like, I don't know if it's just me, but whenever I'm still in middle school, bro, I'm wanting to have fun in the summers. I'm not really trying to go to all these tournaments, make most of my summer about trying to get recruited, but just play with the boys. So then once you get to that high school area, that's when it gets serious. And I think everyone can agree with that. At that point, you're worried about the next step, which is college, whereas middle school, it's high school. So putting that rule in, I think, takes a little bit of the load off of, now I'm a freshman. I got to figure out my way through high school and I got to start prepping for college. And now entering my entering my junior year, where I'm already starting to look at schools in general. Like, I'm really having to decide on my future. Then this recruiting comes into place where now I can actually now coach can actually contact me. I think the rule is beautiful, honestly.
Yeah, I would agree. I actually think the rule is good too. I think middle school is way too early to commit to a college because it's like you don't even have like critical thinking skills yet, really. You're still kind of developing. You're not able to make such a big decision that soon in your life. And I think that's why Brendan O'Neill didn't end up going to Penn State, because he committed all the way back in 8th grade. And it's like things change. You have 4 more years of school before you even go to Penn State. And it's like
exactly
a lot of things change over those years, especially in high school, because you start to grow as a player, meet new people, meet other schools that you didn't even consider all the way back in 8th grade, which is kind of crazy to think. Like, I was not that good. So, summer for me was messing around. I don't know. I didn't even play travel lacrosse yet, which is insane. But this kid's committed to Penn State. So I agree. I think the rule is good. One thing I'd like to ask you is, do you think that junior year is the right year for them to put the cutoff on, or do you think it should be a little lower, like sophomore year?
No. So as you were saying earlier, you're still growing, you're figuring stuff out, but not even just as a player, but as a person. I don't think, if we're not even looking at sports, but we're looking at kids as in general, at that age, I don't think I was as mature to be making those decisions as a sophomore as I was getting ready to go into my junior year. So freshman to junior year, I think I was okay, I kind of got to hold at how high school works in terms of, okay, this is kind of the whole process. Going to my junior year, now I've taken those first 2 years. Going into my junior year, I know I need to be serious about everything. I know college is coming up. My grades are this is where for me, it's set in stone that my grades are important, SATs, everything. So I think kids going into their 3rd year of high school, you're over 50%, you're at 50% done at the start of your junior year. I think it's fair. Now, sophomore year, I don't know about that. I think that's where it gets a little bit iffy, because especially with lacrosse, whereas you can hit a huge, in terms of player IQ, skill level growth in 1 year is tremendous. Personally, for me, going into my sophomore year, I wouldn't say it was that great. Going into my junior year, I was still not as the best, but I definitely grew from that 1 year of playing that helped me get
Right.
recruited in the long run. So with that being said, I think that the rule is good where it is. Giving those kids those extra 2 years of high school just to develop their skills, I think is perfect for me.
I mean, even outside of skills, your maturity level like
Yeah.
increases, and you start to have different like needs and wants that you want as a more of an adult form of yourself. And I think that like sophomore year, you're still a teenager. Like you don't care that much about college right then and there. You're thinking about the girls at the school, the lax chicks, that's what you're thinking about. You know, it's like summer lacrosse is great, but Stephanie's over on the lacrosse team and I want to go, see her. And it's like, oh, but you're supposed to be able to determine what college you want to go to then. It's like,
Yeah.
okay. I think it's a good place. And on the recruiting side of it, I think like the recruitment coaches and like staff, it takes a big weight off their shoulder from like Division 1 schools because they don't have to look all the way to middle school. They don't have to plan that far ahead. All they have to be able to do is look at the juniors and above. That's all you have to do. You don't have to go all the way back and start recruiting for like 30 years in advance. You know what I mean? And I think it takes a big weight off their shoulders as well.
Yeah, I mean, how do you recruit a kid who, okay, yeah, maybe he looks like he's if I recruit a kid right now, say he's an 8th grader, he's 5'10", he's bigger than all the other kids. All right, well, all the other kids haven't matured, they haven't hit their growth spurts or anything. So that development over the next couple of years is going to be completely different because this kid may look good now with versus the competition versus kids he's playing with. Give him a couple of years. All right, so these are different kids. He's now playing with kids who are his height or even bigger, even better skill level. So I just don't see how you can pluck a kid from right here and say, yeah, by the time you get to like college, you're going to be like even better than you are now because anything
totally
can
agree.
happen in those multiple years.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's kind of crazy that they were offering that
It
early
is.
because it's a big risk. Like, they could just stop caring and then I mean, there has to be some kind of thing in like a contract that says like you will keep playing lacrosse, something like that. I don't know. There has to be, right? Like there's no way they just are like, yeah, we'll offer you.
Yeah,
You
I
can
mean, if
commit
you
to our
really
schools.
want him though, you're gonna tell him anything. I mean, if I'm putting myself in the mind of an 8th grader and I see a coach is interested in me that young, I'm just like, okay, like like I'm not gonna
Also
really,
true.
yeah, I'm really not gonna question it. And I think I don't know, I don't think you're old enough to really know what questions to ask a coach at that level. Like, so what's the
Yeah, no,
gear
for
like?
sure.
That's the
You're
only question.
definitely not. Yeah,
So
that's such an interesting thing. Like I just still don't get how that worked with Brandon O'Neill. Like clearly he did still get better over the years. Like
well, I mean,
he
if
improved.
we're talking about Brendan O'Neill, though, I mean, he wasn't the only one. I mean, there was plenty of other kids who had already committed to schools during that time. Now,
Right.
I don't have their names on me, but I know a lot of schools got off commitments before that rule hit because it wasn't illegal yet. And a
I
lot of
think
those
wasn't
kids
Michael
ended up,
Sowers one of them?
huh?
Wasn't Michael Sowers one of them? I
No,
thought.
because he was a 16. He was 2016.
Oh, okay.
So he
Mm,
was all right. But like you take like Xavier Arline, who's originally committed to UNC.
right.
He committed, now he's at the Naval Academy playing football. You see, like stuff changes, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I don't I don't think you can really give a kid an offer at 8th grade, say, yeah, you're gonna come play for me in 5 years.
Right.
Dude, that's like
Insane.
it's crazy. But
Yeah, so I think we're both in agreement that this rule is a good rule to have, which
so
is
like
interesting.
looking at that though, so like how do you think the recruiting game has changed because of it?
Well, like I said, obviously the recruiting like coaches have a lot less to look at. So I feel like you have to stand out even more because you're more concentrated. So like I feel like you'll get more looks since you're only allowed to look at juniors and above.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, it's like you have to be the best of the best now
Yeah.
because this is it. This is your only time. This is your window. Whereas in middle school, you could be like on the radar, but you still have 5 years to
To
get
get
up
like
there.
taller, better, everything.
Right.
No, I agree.
That's definitely interesting.
Because it's like that moment you hit your freshman year. I was actually talking to he's class of 2025 last year. He was kind of telling me what he experienced with that. He said
Mhm.
as soon as he hit his freshman year, that's when coaches started watching. Now they couldn't talk to these players, they couldn't do anything, but that's when like it became a thing. Like you're starting the recruiting process now. They can't talk to you, but you are starting now. You want to be on their list that by the time your junior year comes, they've seen you develop and everything. But you go like these sophomores who went to their junior years, they had to go to the best camps just to get noticed. Like it's not even just
Right.
old tournaments you can go to now. You have to stand out with the best of the best to get recruited to play at least Division I lacrosse. And spoiler alert, 2 weeks we're talking about this politics and recruiting, but as of right now, it becomes a game of where are you playing at and where can a coach see you, which puts a disadvantage for other kids, I would say, like especially like non-hotbeds like yours and I.
Right.
Texas and Michigan aren't big hotbeds. We got to go other places, which we've mentioned this before. You have to go like Juniors Open, 5-star. Those are just to name a few that you have. Those are the places you got to get seen at.
Exactly. And I think the also interesting thing is like, you can't, how am I going to put this? I lost the thought. We'll come back. All right.
Yeah.
So, while we're on this subject though, I was thinking about it. So look how it affects lacrosse. Football is similar in the recruiting process, but it's like they have different rules. So how do you think that compares football to lacrosse? So I know that in football, you can get contacted June 15th after your sophomore year. So
Right.
theirs isn't like almost a year earlier. It's very interesting, I think.
You see, that's where I think it starts to become a sports thing, because football, lacrosse, very different processes. There are way more schools that can offer football than schools that offer lacrosse. So definitely you have a wider range of possibilities. And, most kids that play football, I don't think I'm even speaking out of term here. I think their goal is to play Division I. I don't think their
Right.
first goal is to play Division II, Division III. They want to go D1.
No, yeah, definitely.
Now, while I'm saying that, they're going to camps already. I know this because high schools hold camps, coaches come down and watch kids. They're already eyeing kids. And I personally believe that football gets around some of those rules to the point where kids know who's looking at them at that point. And now with all the social media recruiting sites that football has, where they can put, kids ranks and everything, like the stars, how you'll have 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars.
Right.
Football, I feel like that also makes it easy. So you stand out even the slightest, your star can just get you like looks automatically. Because
Right.
I mean, think about it. If you're on a recruiting website, you see a running back who's a 1-star, and you see a running back who's a 5-star, who's getting the offer first? So
Right. Exactly.
I think it really comes down to things like that. Whereas in lacrosse, I feel like stars matter, but it's a little bit different. Whereas, it's also, all right, where have you been playing? What schools have you played
Right.
against? Because you can have a kid who's played, he may have played for the best club team, but he might not, have a ranking on him or anything.
Right.
So,
And I think that's also interesting because for football, I feel like you have more information about all the players, like you were saying on the
yeah,
website and stuff. And even like they have more things on Huddle for football players. And like lacrosse recruiting, it's like you barely even know the kid. You just saw him play. You think he's good. So you're going to maybe offer him. And it's like a huge risk because you don't have as much information compared to football where you have, this stat
yeah.
and these highlights, and you have so much information available. So I think it's definitely different than football.
To that point, though, I will say, though, lacrosse is a hard sport to get a wide database from, because with football, you already know that if you're looking at a kid's stats, all you have to do is tell where they are. And most of the time, their stat, regardless of just high school alone, can get them places. But lacrosse is a little bit different because you look at like a lacrosse team. Lacrosse is not like nationwide, so you can look at a kid from like Florida who maybe he put up like 120 points this year, but then it comes down to, all right, well, was this competition the best, but also what's his travel team? Whereas football, you can get by on just playing high school, where lacrosse, you have to do good in high school, but also in your summer circuit as well.
Right. Especially summer, I would say.
So I think that's where the sports like even I believe baseball has this rule too. So I believe that's where the sports start to differ. Some high schools you can get by on, or no, some sports you can get by on just playing, in your season for your school team. sports like baseball, lacrosse, softball, your summer circuit is very important, which I believe it's where football has that advantage in recruiting. You do have
Yeah,
databases. You can just look at a kid's stats from this year, look at his accolades, and say, this kid will fit in perfectly with my team.
right. And also to that point, I feel like universities, the majority of them, when you look at a major big university Division I football, all the funding is football.
Yeah.
All of the funding goes to football because it makes the most money. And I feel like that is a big factor in recruiting. Like, this is kind of a different topic, but I feel like it's easier to get Division I football offers because they have more of a budget to have more players.
Yeah.
And in lacrosse, it's like you have to be the best.
You do.
You have to be better than everybody. You don't get any free passes because there's not as much funding and there's not as much attention on the sport. So it's like you have to be the best if you want to come play for, Duke or Syracuse. And it's definitely a big difference, I would say.
Yeah, and even then, I just find that fact on its own crazy that lacrosse for one. I mean, I just so we have this stat correct. It's lacrosse can offer, was it 12.6 scholarships per team, right? Division I.
I think so, yeah.
I believe that's right. And if you have a 55-man roster, dude, you have to. You can't even like accurately split those up to the point where everyone's going to be okay with how much scholarship they're getting. Not to mention that half the schools that have collegiate lacrosse are not. They're privately funded. Like they're private schools. They're not state institutions. And even then the state institutions that are there, that's like, you're talking Big Ten schools, Jacksonville. And even then that's even hard. Most of those schools are top schools. They're very hard to get recruited at. So like to your point, it's a very, you have to show out in lacrosse, which makes it even harder. So using those years, like we said, to get as good as you can so that going into your junior year, you're seen as a top prospect. They're very important.
Yeah, put it this way. Basically, in football, they're investing money to get you to come to their school. But in lacrosse, it's like you have to make them invest in you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the football players are going to be like, oh, who's going to invest the most in me? They have options. Where in lacrosse, it's like, how am I going to get them to invest in me? It's a different question, asked when you're getting recruited, I feel like. Definitely.
Which then I personally, during my recruiting process, I felt like the schools that really invested in me were the schools that I really didn't expect to. I would going into my process, I was like, man, I wanted to September 1st, my junior year, I was like, all right, cool. I got one school hit me up. Oh, I got another school hit me up. But it's like the coaches weren't really interested. They weren't going to give me money. Those are things you look for as like a student athlete, because a lot of these schools are private schools and they're kind of hard to pay for all the time. But then like you get like a D2 or D3 school who's like, hey, we're really interested in you. We have a little bit more money to give you. Like, come play for us. So whereas football, it's like they can just, any Division I school can just be like, yo, full ride, here you go. Like
Corvette, sit in the Corvette, wear the chain, sit on the golden throne in Notre Dame. It's like, okay.
It's still a whole thing, man. Like it's crazy. And which is why I'm so glad we're gonna be going way deeper into this. But how much, okay, so last question, how much regulation do you think they actually have around this whole rule? Because personally, I've heard some things about how people are starting to get around the rule and start contacting the kids earlier on as well. So what
and that's what I was thinking too, is when we're discussing this topic, I'm thinking, who's actually making sure that recruits aren't getting contacted before this day? And I don't really know who is responsible, to be honest. I'm guessing the NCAA, obviously, because it's their rule, but I don't know who enforces it. I don't know how you can enforce it, because I feel like football is more of a mainstream media type of thing. Yeah. So if something does happen, it will get exposed. But in lacrosse, it doesn't have a spotlight like that. So it's like you can almost kind of get underneath the radar, I feel like, if you really wanted to. And I don't think you'd really get caught, which is kind of crazy. It's a little unethical, but I feel like that's kind of how it is with lacrosse.
Which, I mean, there's not much you can do about it to stop it. I mean, like you said, it's not as mainstream as like football, basketball, or even other sports. Like, it's a hard thing to really put down half your community to say, yeah, watch every single way this kid was recruited. Find out, like, did they have any recruiting violations? But the rule itself says that the coach can't contact the players personally. Now, what's stopping the coach from like, oh, so this, your club coach, right? Yeah, you coach this kid, like, tell me about, like, Dude, like,
Right.
you mean to tell me that if you're a club coach, here's that hit one of you're a club coach. A coach comes up to you, is like, yo, I
Right.
want to recruit this kid. What can you tell me about him? Like, you're not gonna like tell that kid or give him some like give the coach back, like, yeah, my kid's like solid. That's still a
Yeah.
form of contact, I believe. Like
Yeah.
you're
Right.
still coming into contact. It's just not directly through the kid, which is the
Right.
revolution itself. So I know that different sports probably do the same thing to get around it.
Mhm.
There really isn't a lot to stop coaches from really figuring out players at an early stage.
Yeah. I don't even know what they could do to like have a grasp on that, honestly, because it's like it's almost impossible to not to know,
It really
honestly.
is. I mean, think about how many athletes there are. You mean to tell me they're going to watch every single kid who's trying to get recruited? I mean, you know how many
Right.
like, student athletes there are in America is like in general. Like, how do you watch every single one of them to make sure all of them are following the rules?
Yeah. And do you think that breaking this sort of rule or bending it, right, would affect like a team's success, maybe even like a team's percentage to win a championship in the future? Do you think
Honestly,
it goes to that extent or no?
honestly, no. I mean, because think at the end of the day, the kid that you recruit, he's gonna go there because he wants to. And so if I'm recruiting, like say I'm like Maryland, right? I already have guys like I know want to come to this program, regardless of if
Right.
I say break this rule or not. I'm gonna get some of the best kids who I know are gonna fit into my program. And if
Right.
that's what I'm going for, if I'm going to recruit a kid, I'm gonna recruit a kid who's gonna fit into my system. And if that kid doesn't want to come here and he fits better in another team system, I'm gonna look for
Mhm.
another kid who's gonna do it. So I
Right.
think at the end of the day, you're really, yeah, you might miss some recruits because you're not gonna get everyone. But I
Mhm.
don't think it's going to make a team better or worse because that also just plays into how do they fit into your school once they get there.
Right. I feel like, but on the other hand, I feel like if a team did bend these rules and get to a player first, and it's like one of his first Division 1 offers, maybe, and it's that early that they could get the jump on Maryland because this kid's like, I just got a D1 offer. Like, I got to take it, like he thinks maybe it's his only offer, but it's like he's gone already. He commits already. He's already committed to the other program. And I feel like that's where it could come into play, where like the powerhouses like Duke, Maryland, all the teams that are in the playoffs consistently might get
That's a good
screwed
point.
over.
They're
Yeah.
definitely going to get a jump on those kids just by their household
Right.
name. But I think also now that we got to look at the transfer portals coming into play now with the
Oh yeah,
recruiting game as well.
definitely.
So I mean, maybe I don't get this upcoming recruit, but what if I get a veteran who already knows the college game?
Right.
I mean, at that time, you don't have to break the kid in. You just have to
Hmm.
show him the plays that you're going to run and tell him
Yeah.
to go do it. So,
Basically, you let him fit the puzzle piece. That's what it is.
which I mean, I really did. I'm just foreshadowing, man. But like, it's the way it is. It's the new game. It's a new part of
All
recruiting,
right.
and that's just gonna ready. It's gonna be the way it
Yep.
is. All right, guys, that's it for another episode of Unstrung Heroes podcast. Couple announcements though. Be sure to know that we also are starting another series of just in general NCAA athletes. So any fall athletes, now y'all's time to shine. So be
Hit
ready
us
to hear
up.
some
Social
great
media.
topics. What do you say?
Social media. Hit us up. DM
What's up?
us. Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Comment on YouTube. Hit us up.
Hey, you got a story to share? We want to hear it. All
We
right.
do.
Also, we got a big, very big podcast coming up next week. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Other than that, you like the channel, you like the content, subscribe for more. Go look at our cool Instagram because Braxton makes some very cool posts.
Oh
See some more
yeah.
of that later. All right. See y'all next week.
Peace.